or the speaker view, but at different times there will either be text like this on the screen or just the video for you to look at of the person speaking. If you'd like to chat with a technological question, you would choose UU Congregation of Danbury to send a private message to resolve that issue. But we ask that you hold any feedback on the actual service or the process of the service to an email afterward. Again, welcome to the UU Congregation of Danbury, where we welcome all in a spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service.
Good morning, dear people. It is so good to be with you and to reconnect with you today. It is Memorial Day weekend. In addition to all those Americans killed in combat over many years, we also recognize and think of this year those many people who have died because of the COVID-19 pandemic that we are still in the midst of. 100,000 Americans have now died of the coronavirus at this point, a number that is difficult to wrap our minds and hearts around. And so we grapple with that together today as well, with the only tools we human beings have and have ever had: music, words, our eye beams on each other in the photo gallery, our voices, naming one another in the chat or in our hearts or on pieces of paper around candles at home, holding silence together, witnessing to one another and all our many different feelings and perspectives during this time. Let us take the time that we need to feel. I have noticed myself just this past week the paradox that the only way to move on from a feeling is to first fully let myself feel it. Bottled up and shoved down, feelings just sit like molding food in the back of the fridge, decaying and taking up valuable space. But allowing myself to cry, to journal, to talk to someone, to say out loud those thoughts that can feel scary and overwhelming until expressed, that is what actually allows the feelings to move through me and move on, making room for something new, hopefully something lighter. Zen Buddhist teacher and activist Joan Halifax observes that grief is the opportunity to have our hearts broken open, not just broken. Grief is the opportunity to have our hearts broken open, not just broken. Let us take this time together this morning and every Sunday morning for connecting with each other and with our individual souls and spirits. How goes it with your spirit today? Make a note of all the feelings that are coursing through you. And then let us find and hold up our chalices so that others might see our individual sparks of light as we each take a moment to light our chalices at home. And then after a quiet breath, we'll say the chalice lighting words together. And really also so that we don't burn our houses down trying to do too many things at once. Oh my gosh, the stories we've all started hearing of people trying to do too many things at once at home without quite the space that we're used to in our congregational settings. All right. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. Could all the children, kids, and youth, as you are willing and able, come forward now so that we can see you first and foremost on our screens. Colin Hood will then lead us in the children's affirmation today. So everyone, please hold your U's up in the air.
We are Unitarian, Universalist. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands.
Thank you so much, Colin. And for any other children who are listening who might like to lead us in the Children's Affirmation some Sunday, please let me or Sherry, who is in the chat from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury, know, or Sierra Marie, if you're in touch with her, she can make sure that she connects you and your family with whoever's leading the service the coming Sunday or the Sunday that you're available and would like to lead us in the U's. We love to hear the voices of the children and youth in this congregation. I am going to share with you this story, and it's right over here, so hold on just a second. Not knocking over the chalice. Not doing that. All right. This is The Weaver by Thatcher Hurd. Pictures by Alyssa Clevin. This was a book that was given to us when our older child was a baby, and I just came upon it recently and thought that it resonated for me with the message and the sermon and the service and the weekend. Beyond the earth, near yet far, the weaver sits in the light of the rising sun, singing a song, watching the world while her fingers are at work. First, she spins her thread from trails of shooting stars, white clouds, and spider webs hung with dew. Then she dyes the thread with the colors of the morning, blue from the sky, green from the grass, yellow from the sun on the fields, purple from the deep water. As the sun rises high in the sky, her fingers work faster, and the shuttle begins to fly back and forth across her loom. Looking down on the world, the weaver sees a smile on someone's face, a hug between friends, babies crying and then held warm in their parents' arms. Children laughing, a kiss given with love, a heart that is full. She weaves all these things into her cloth, a cloth of friendships, loves intertwined, happy, sad, angry, joyful, lives held together like vines. The sun is setting and the weaver's work is almost done. Gently, she lifts the cloth from her loom and begins to dance. Over mountains and rivers and towns, over cities and countries and the deep ocean. As she dances, she spreads the cloth like a coat across the night sky. The stars and the moon are its buttons. Its pockets are filled with our memories. It drifts down to the earth below, a coat to warm us and protect us, a coat to fill us with joy. And as it settles around us, we dream in our beds while the moon glows above and the weaver dances back to her home, far above the world. What I took from this book that resonated for me this week as I was preparing these words is that we are all held together like vines, connected in ways we do not even realize, through time and across space. So I hope you soaked in some of the beautiful pictures from that book and can take in that imagery of the ways in which we are held together like invisible vines. Let us now sing with our children and with Nancy, This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. it shine, let it shine. Building up a wall, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a wall, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a wall, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Thank you, Nancy. You are all now invited during the music that follows to write in the chat your milestones, the personal news of your life that is either weighing down or lifting up your heart this morning, and in particular this Sunday, those who are on your mind and heart this Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you, Carl. It is now time for our congregational offering. If you are with us for the first time, feel free to pass the virtual plate. Your presence here in the Zoom room is your gift to us. Members, please click the link on your screen to make a donation or a pledge. Even though we are not in our beloved fellowship hall, our operating expenses are still the same. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge in Danbury. And thank you for doing your part to support this community we love so much. Please join me now in the words of our congregational response printed in your order of service. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offering.
Take a moment and move with me, or I'm going to move because I forgot to do that until right now, enjoying the chat. So just imagine me on the chancel getting myself organized. Thank you, Carl. I so love getting to chat with you all. That's one of the weird things about this format, right? Is that there's this other experience of getting able to interact with some of you following the spoken milestones that is not normally a part of our service. It will be someday we will go back to less of this online format, and that will be an interesting thing to give up. I guess it's the coffee hour. It's the coffee hour and the as you come in and as you go out kind of things we would be chatting about in the parking lot, and I do miss that. So it is good to be able to do some of that online. Some of you may have heard me share this story before. This is what came up for me when I sat down to write out these words. When I was in my early 20s, after graduating from college in New York City and moving to Philadelphia, I had a very full-time job at an arts organization on UPenn's campus. In the midst of the hecticness of those days, my strong-willed, opinionated, feisty grandmother, who I'd been taught only to call Tilly, not Grandma or anything in that vein, she had a stroke, and for some months she was in rehabilitation at a nursing home in Oregon that was very sterile, and I think it was just the nursing home they could get her into quickly. And she hated that experience. Truly, I'm not sure hated is a strong enough word for her feelings at that time. I distinctly remember her calling me, and again, I was in my early 20s at my first full-time job, managing other people, and I picked up the corded phone on my desk at work, as we still did in those days, pick up corded phones, and she asked me if I could please come to Oregon from Philadelphia right now and help her to die. I don't recall how I replied in that moment, but I can instantly remember the, geez, gut-wrenching feeling of not being able to help, not even being able to drop everything and be with her at that excruciating time for her. Though Tilly was eventually able to get out of that nursing home and return to her comfortable, art-filled condominium, she had another stroke some months later while alone at home, and that is how she died. And what was communicated to me, still on the other side of the country, still in my early 20s, and not at all feeling the kind of independence or resources to be able to abandon my life in Philadelphia and fly home to Oregon on a moment's notice. What I was told was, she didn't want a memorial service, don't come, maybe we'll have a small gathering later on. For weeks and months and even years, I still caught myself in the instinct of reaching to pick up the phone and give Tilly a call or write her a letter, she who had instructed me on the art of correspondence and the imperative of thank yous from an early age. Though there are many experiences and people and reasons that I felt called me into parish ministry, this experience of there being no acknowledgement, there never was a small gathering, it never came together, of my very unique and memorable grandmother may be the pivotal event that projected me into this officiating role, this determined player in making sure when I'm able that we do carve out the time and the attention to observe these fundamental rituals of gathering however we are able and honoring rites of passage. I still think regularly about how Tilly had a complicated family system, as we all do, and it later sort of became revealed that her brother's family didn't really want to be around her, my schizophrenic uncle, and there were reasons maybe that people were wary of having a gathering, and yet I never got to meet those family members as an adult. I had been in a family reunion as a kid, but that was it. After she died, I never connected or saw any of them. That was the moment where we might have made some connections or relationships or reconnected in her honor. There have been at least 330,000 deaths across the world from the coronavirus at this point. We are approaching at least 100,000 in the United States. While the president of this country questions those numbers, and those tracking the number of deaths with great care suggest that the number is actually quite higher, we, the living, journey through this strange Memorial Day weekend. I came across the random factoid this past week that 612 Connecticut residents died in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. There is a $40,000 memorial for those veterans raised. The money was raised by middle school students. There's a memorial for those veterans in Coventry that was inspired in part by a project of Coventry middle school students, and that was dedicated just in 2008, not so long ago. And all of that got me thinking, how will we memorialize the over 3,600 that have now died in Connecticut due to the coronavirus? And when is the right time to even begin thinking about that? Grief specialist and author David Kessler urges us all to know that any and every time is the right time to honor the passing of life, that we should not get stuck in feeling like either we have an online memorial or we have an in-person memorial at a later date. Both can happen. Both are necessary. Kessler observes that our national conversation has been so consumed so far by talking about the disease and trying to get the economy back to normal that there has been not nearly enough focus on the deceased. Each loss deserves attention, Kessler says. You can't reschedule grief to a later date. Death needs to be marked in real time. We need to find ways to walk with each other virtually and hold each other's hands virtually during this time. I try to visualize something like the beautiful warmth of the weaver's cloak. We live with invisible cloaks wrapped around us, a cloth of friendships, loves intertwined, happy, sad, angry, joyful, lives held together like vines. While social media certainly has its downsides and rabbit holes, Facebook and other social media platforms can help us to feel and visualize those vines a little more palpably. We can get online and be reminded of our interconnected lives across the miles, the time zones, beyond our individual household preoccupations. These screens, these squares that we are giving so much of our time to looking into, these portals, can be windows and doorways into the lives of others. And in this time of pandemic, we are reading about so many people we didn't know in life, all of the obituaries. Wilson German, White House butler, cleaner at first at the White House in 1957 and then retired during the Obama years in 2012. Playwright Terrence McNally, musicians Little Richard and John Prine, freedom writer and street artist Sally Rowley, Leroy Spaniel, who I wrote about in the chat, friend of the Unitarian Society of Hartford congregation. Jean Rengillian, UUCD member for 50 years. All those who have died from COVID-19 while in prison, all those essential workers who have died so quickly and without nearly enough acknowledgement. A group of activist, organizer friends, artists, and beautiful agitators put together an online event this past week, an event called Naming the Lost, and you can find it online at namingthelost.com. It was a 24-hour live online event, reading the names, as many names as could be gathered and read aloud, of the close to 100,000 Americans now having died of COVID-19. The organizers of this powerful event wrote on the website, "The lack of collective mourning during the COVID-19 crisis has left many feeling even more isolated and alone, and created a gap in the public conversation about what is at stake and who is suffering at this time. We know that every person who has died from COVID-19 and its impacts was so much more than a number or a statistic. And we felt it was important to honor them and the people around them by reading their names, especially in the days leading up to Memorial Day." I became aware of this event only after it had occurred. And in theory, I wanted to listen to it. Like, how amazing that they created this event with people all over the country sharing screens and going from one list to another, reading these names. But I confess, it took me some time to get myself in the right frame of mind to sit and listen to the listing of names, each a life, each an individual, each somebody that somebody loved. It wasn't easy to carve out that time, and I only listened for an hour. Their names, their ages, where they died. Some of their names, some of their towns were so close. You know, one different last name, or East Hartford instead of Hartford. I mean, it was really sobering. At the same time, I kept pondering a story that a woman named Mary shared on NPR last week. Mary's grandmother died in the 1918 flu pandemic. Her mother, she went on to say, was only 14 years old then. Her mother always talked about how they were not able to have a funeral service. So instead, she grieved for her mother all her life. We know so much more about grief today, Mary offered. I hope people will receive more help. And for me, a critical point of that connection is showing up for each other right here on Sunday mornings and just acknowledging the craziness of this time we're in and the people that we each have lost. Even just that acknowledgement, even just naming the names, is a step towards healing and acknowledgement and recognition. There are countless other kinds of loss we're all dealing with too. Walking the elementary school field near our home one morning this past week, I felt truly sad about the experiences of just being joyful and silly at home that our 3-year-old and our rising 3rd grader, no, wait, hold on, I need to re-say this. I felt, because they aren't at home in my mind, I felt truly sad about the experiences of just being joyful and silly at school that our 3-year-old and our rising 3rd grader almost certainly won't have this fall. At the very same time, I see and hear them right now playing and making forts in our living room. And I keep trying to take in that right now anyway, today and this weekend, they are fine. Kids are resilient, as so many people like to say. And you know what? Pardon me for this coarse language, but it still sucks. It sucks that they're not able to look forward to the summer activities that they would have been normally. All their swimming lessons have been canceled for this summer. I want to somehow capture our 2nd graders' memories of what school was like before COVID-19, still just 3 months ago, and engrave those memories into her mind and heart. And at the same time, I realized that actually probably wouldn't help. Maybe part of our human coping is to let some of the shine of crystal clear memories go. If we hold on to every aspect of everything and everyone we have lost, how could we keep stepping into the new day, the new moment, the new experience, open-hearted to what is happening now? I keep thinking, and at first I was like, why do I keep thinking of this quote? I keep thinking of the great Howard Thurman quote. And if you're not familiar with Howard Thurman, please look him up. His classic books are so relevant all the time. His words are number 498 in our Singing the Living Tradition hymnal. In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of the holy, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in good times or in tempests, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. When I was a full-time hospital chaplain resident in the mid-2000s, which I'm now hearing called the aughts, the mid-2000s in Portland, Oregon, I absorbed an important life lesson that I have not forgotten and want to close with this morning. And this is the resolve part of this reflection. I witnessed a fairly standard amount of death and tragedy in that Trauma One Center hospital that year. And in particular, there was one family with adult children about my age at the time, whose father had gone into the hospital for heart surgery and whose heart was tragically not able to be restarted after the surgery. I was there when the doctor shared this news with the family in the small family conference room. And I was there when the doctor left and one of the newly deceased young sons stood up and pummeled the wall with anger. I felt gutted myself, unable to think of anything helpful to say, and devastated for this family. And then my supervisor, thank goodness for her, said something to me in the days that followed that I have never forgotten. She said, "Heather, it's not your tragedy. In the midst of all this pain and sorrow we are now living immersed in and turning our attention to every day, sometimes multiple times throughout the day, we also have to take care of ourselves. Notice what we give ourselves over to feeling and what we then balance ourselves out with. There will be pain close enough for each of us to feel. But it is also important for ourselves and everyone else in our lives and immediate circles that we maintain our ability and practice of centering joy, of laughing, of marveling at beauty, of prioritizing gladness and deep gratitude. I know that I can get absorbed in somebody else's life and sadness. I can be deeply moved by the story of someone's life cut too short and the ups and downs of their life journey, accomplishments, and learnings, and feel terribly sad about their death. And at the same time, I have to remind myself that in some cases, 5 minutes earlier, I had not even known they existed. I am reading their obituary. For goodness sake, it is going to be sad. Maybe put a limit on how many obituaries you permit yourself to read in a day, friends. That's what I'm noticing I need to do. Maybe 2 is enough, or 3, but not 7. Anyway, notice the impact for you of taking in those whole life stories that we're seeing so many of around us now. Let us resolve to do what we can in this bizarre and unsettling time to maintain our perspective, our own groundedness. Let us resolve to center and celebrate whatever clarity we can grasp and hold on to about what is good and right and true for us. Let us continually wrap ourselves in the weaver's invisible cloak of friendships, of loves intertwined, of happy and sad and angry and joyful lives and moments held together like vines. Our lives are held together like vines. May it be so. Take a few moments now to sit comfortably, to pause in your thinking and readiness to move on to the next thing. And imagine with me all your interconnections. Visualize the ways we are connected as if they were actually tendrils reaching out like a sprouting plant, stretching along the sill and outwards like a determined vine. Imagine those people to whom you feel most closely connected, and then those that you don't know as well, but who matter to you more than can be put into words. Breathe in gratitude for all these connections, all these tendrils, all these strong and determined vines. Breathe out resolve to reach out yourself, to connect with others, to take the first step in forging some new connections with others during these strange days, with neighbors, with family, with those you've long wanted an excuse to get to know better. Now is that time. We're in a pandemic. So much has changed overnight. May this time change you and your life for the better in whatever ways you can creatively weave. Amen, and blessed be. Join me now in another breath of silence, and then we will all sing together with Nancy, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Move in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the land, giving light the shape of justice. Roots of it low, winds set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Let us each extinguish our chalices now and then join in our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Our closing hymn is a full-hearted one, holding all of life in a single song. I hope you'll join in. If you're not familiar with it, get to know it in the first round, the first verse, and then join in after that. It is a lovely song, and if you're moved to get up and move around, go for it. Thank you, Nancy, for leading us in number 311, Let It Be a Dance.
I'm going to play the melody through once, just for those of us who haven't heard it. Bear with me. Okay, so I'm going to start. Now you've got the flavor of it. Reverend Heather says this is jazzy, so sing it jazzy and get up and dance if you feel moved. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the word. Fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Verse 2. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend like a willow in the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. Time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. Nothing's wrong and nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, hear the pain. Round and round we go again. Let it be a dance.
Thank you, Nancy. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow with the wind, let it be a dance. Sometimes we say it in our household of Unitarian Universalist ministers. Let it be a dance, a little bit with a touch of sarcasm. It can be a little bit amusing to remind ourselves to dance with the flow, the unpredictable flow of life. Please stay with us today for a brief Memorial Day Veterans Recognition. Then join us after this annual recognition for our weekly fellowship time. Instructions, if you need them, will show up on the screen. Blessings to you all on this full weekend. Notice what it is that you need, and please take that time for yourself to journal, to feel, to laugh, to walk, to cry. Know that we are all moving together through this pandemic. I am here for you. You are here for each other. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Joe Gelati will now lead us in the Memorial Day Remembrance.
Good morning. Each year here at UUCD, we remember and honor our veterans by having a brief Memorial Day ceremony. Memorial Day is a day for honoring all U.S. military men and women who gave their lives in defense of the United States. The origins of Memorial Day started in 1862, then Armistice Day in 1918, and finally Memorial Day was declared a federal holiday in 1971. This morning, I would like to share a most inspiring story about Navajo Native Americans in World War II who found themselves on the front lines throughout the war. Peter McDonald is the last remaining World War II code talker. He was one of 200 Navajo Native Americans who served in this communication specialty in World War II. The Choctaw Native Americans were called upon to use the same method of communication in World War I. Also, the Danish resistance worked with US forces in Europe during World War II by baffling the German army with secret military coded messages spoken in Danish. His story is entitled Unbreakable Code Talker. Corporal McDonald explained in a video talk recently how effective the Navajos were in helping to save lives and to secure victory in the South Pacific. His belief was that without the Navajo code talkers, US Marines would never have taken the island of Iwo Jima. Code talkers used their native language to send secret military messages. Navajos developed this coding technique in 1942. Commanders would write out their request, and the Navajos would encrypt the message, then speak it in their native language when transmitting the final version. This inspiring and dramatic story takes place in February 1945 on top of Mount Suribachi. Mount Suribachi is where the famous picture was taken of the 6 US Marines raising the flag after they ferociously fought their way to secure the top of the mountain. From the top of Mount Suribachi, American soldiers could see the nearby mountain with a company of US Marines pinned down. The Marines were being fired upon from 3 different directions and about to be overrun by a superior number of Japanese troops. If a message for help was sent through the normal channels, translated in English code, it would have taken 30 minutes. The message would be sent from land to ship and then back to the command center at the base of the mountain before help could be dispatched. By then, the stranded Marines would have all been overrun and killed. A Navajo code talker was asked to send a message to the command center at the base of the mountain immediately. In the video, Corporal McDonald stated the exact message in his native Navajo language in the encrypted format. This was his exact quote. After this critical message was translated from the encrypted Navajo version into English. Sheep, eyes, nose, deer, destroyer, tea, mouse, turkey, onion, sick horse, 3, 6, 2, bear. This is exactly what the emergency translated encrypted message stated. Send demolition team to Hill 362B. The message was sent and received almost immediately. Total time, 20 seconds. A company of Marines were immediately dispatched up the hill known as 362B, and they ended up saving the lives of the trapped Marines. Total casualties to take the island of Iwo Jima in 5 weeks of fighting was 7,000 Marines killed, 20,000 wounded. In conclusion, I would like to further dramatize this method of communication that was used during World War II. However, I don't have a Navajo American code talker to help me this morning. But what I do have is a Danish American sitting next to me who is willing to help. She will demonstrate the efficacy of this type of coded messaging. You, the listener, will be able to experience and fully appreciate the mystery of why this technique was so effective on the battlefield. This communication specialist will enunciate the exact Navajo coded talker message that was sent from the top of Mount Suribachi. However, it will be in Danish.
Får, øjne, næse, hjorte, krigsskib, te, mus, kalkun, løg, syg, hest, 362, bjørn.
I can just visualize the enemy German soldiers who are monitoring US lines saying to themselves, what was that? Please take a moment today to focus your attention on US Armed Forces men and women who gave their lives to save this country. They are the real heroes. We're so pleased this morning and grateful to have Julie Tarmentana play taps to close our UUCD Memorial Day ceremony. In deference to those who paid for our freedom with their lives, you can place your right hand over your heart as Julie begins to play.
Please keep me